summary of the articulatory gestures. So students, it's now the time to review the summary of the articulatory gestures which are possible in world languages. We have gone through various articulatory gestures, and within this summary we would conclude that what types of those manners of articulation possible in world languages. So in order to decide those complete possible phonetic abilities of a human being in terms of the manners of articulation, we need to reply and we need to answer at questions, right? In order to cover every possible manner of articulation, we would answer these at questions, okay? So the first question is that what is the airstream mechanism, right? Like we have three airstream mechanisms: the pulmonic airstream mechanism, where the air is coming from lungs, and the second is glottalic airstream mechanism, right? When the glottis, the up and down of the glottis is used, and the air is not coming from lungs, but it is created as a source for the energy, as an energy, required for the production of sound. And then the third airstream mechanism is the velar airstream mechanism, when the tongue is closing, basically two closure. One is at the velum, right, and the second is at the front, right. And when it is, the front is released, then the air is rushing in, right, rushing into the mouth cavity, and that's the velaric airstream mechanism. Okay, so what is the airstream mechanism? That is one fundamental question. And then the second is that what's the direction of the airstream mechanism? The direction, like, is the air getting in while the production of speech sound, or is it getting out of the oral cavity while the production of speech sound? Most of the time we are producing speech sounds when the air is getting out of the cavity, and those sounds are called aggressive, right? But there could be some possibility of ingressive or implosive sounds, right? Implosive, like the Sindhi ba, ba. So the air is rushing in while the production of this, ingressive sound. So what's the direction again? And then the third question is that what's the state of the glottis, right? Larynx. So what's the state of the glottis? Like, is it in the voicing mood? Is it voiced or voiceless? Is it aspiration mode? Is it on aspiration mode? Or like it is in a creaky, configuration, or breathy configuration, murmuring, right? Or whispering. So that is also an important aspect of the, the position of larynx or the state of glottis, right? The fourth question is that what part of the tongue is involved, right? Is it the tip of the tongue? Right, the tip of the tongue. So if the blade of the tongue is used, then the sound would be called, laminal. So that variation between apical and laminal, which is very typically used in the description of speech sounds. But there are some other configurations also involved, like when the front part of the tongue is used, or when the back part of the tongue is used, or when the dorsal is used, or the root of the tongue is used. Right? So these are the configurations which give us the information that which part of the tongue is used. And that's an important question in order to describe the articulatory gestures possible in human languages. And then the fifth question is that what's the primary place of articulation? Okay, like for example, in alveolar ridge, the primary place of articulation, which is the target area for the production of speech sound, that's the alveolar ridge. But there could be some other possibility. And that possibility is that some secondary articulation may be involved. And a very good example is the English sound w, W sound, which is articulated from lips, bilabial sound, but the velar is also involved because your back of the tongue is raising towards the velar. And that's a good example that how can we differentiate between the primary place of articulation? We should know that. And is there any possibility of the secondary place of articulation? Is the sound central or lateral? So the air is passing through the center of the oral cavity or at the sides, like in the case of L sound, right? And then the second last question is that is the sound oral or nasal? Is your nasal cavity, used, or the oral cavity? So ultimately, what's the position of your velum? Is it raised or lowered? So that's the second last question. And the last one is that what's the manner of articulation? Like having the knowledge of all those 7 questions, what exactly is the manner of articulation which can, differentiate that particular specific sound under discussion from the rest of the possible articulatory gestures. So in order to give the summary of all speech sounds, we should answer all these 8 questions.